Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today I bring in Zack Leonard for the first time. Hey Zach, how you doing?
Hey, Danny, doing well. Glad to be here. Excited to share some knowledge with your listeners.
Sounds good. Can you give me a little bit of background on yourself and for the audience as well, please?
Absolutely. So I'm in Austin, Texas, the capital of barbecue and Tex-Mex food. I started a company a couple of years ago called Gemba, and we help businesses from ranging in size from 7 to 9 figures with all their supply side needs. So anything from research through design, through product innovation, prototyping, and then ultimately getting it made overseas with your factory partners with a team over in China that handles all of the factory relationship management and logistics and quality control. So your one-stop shop for all your supply chain needs.
And there's a lot to kind of cover in terms of, there's some of the stuff we were talking off call about the cultural things around tea, which I wasn't even aware of. And I think I may have offended my factory. And it'd be good to do a bit of a refresher for people that are doing business in China. Obviously, if people are going over to Canton and over to Hong Kong, etc., in April and in October. So I know you wanted today to chat and share some information on the cultural aspect and doing some business with factories and stuff. I mean, a lot of our listeners are already going to China and doing business with their factories, but it'd be good to get a bit of a reminder and talk from slightly different angles from your perception as you do this at like mass scale, if you like.
Right.
So, yeah, I'll let you kick off proceedings.
Yeah. So, to frame this, I think you're absolutely right. There's so much that goes into the relationship between a factory partner and a business. And I think, what I've seen, especially in the Amazon world, is this is probably the most important relationship outside of your customers that you're going to have because they're in charge of making the actual product that you sell. And so they need to start valuing it like it is the most important part of your business outside of your customers, right? So your customers are there to buy your product, give you the feedback, help you to iterate, really drive your business from a sales perspective. But from a cost perspective, it's all on the factory. And so you need to be able to have a great relationship with your factory. And so what I want to talk about today is Guangxi, which is the business culture over in China, and give some knowledge and some tips and some tools and tricks that can really help you not only advance your business, but also develop a really awesome relationship with your factory that's going to yield some awesome returns, not just personally, but also to your business. So the first thing is, I think, visiting your factory on a regular basis is extremely important. So face-to-face interaction is probably the most important thing that the Chinese business culture values. And then when you're actually in person, there's some things that you need to really understand, which is the cultural aspect of how to do business in China. And from a start, like you talked about the tea culture, this is a really big deal and a really big way that the Chinese get to understand who you are, is inviting you to do a simple act, which is have some tea with them. So, for example, you go to your factory, the first thing they ask you is, what do you want to drink? Every time you go to your factory, if they ask you that, have tea. The whole visit that you have with your factory, whether it's the first time, whether it's the third time, whether it's the 10th time, it's a way for you and your business partner to kind of read each other and play the game of how can I best make this business relationship move forward. And so ultimately what you're trying to do is show that you understand their culture. So when they pour the tea, there's something that most people don't understand, and you might have seen it if you've been in China, or you might have seen one of your translators do it. But when they start pouring it, you'll see the Chinese start to knock on the table like this with 2 fingers. That goes back to a 17th century history lesson in China, where the Emperor Long used to enjoy going out into the masses back in the 17th century, and he would dress up as a random guy on the street, and some people would actually recognize him. Instead of blowing his cover, when he would he would ask for tea or something like that, they would knock on the table twice, and so that has transcended across multiple generations, and now that's part of the culture of doing not just business, but in restaurants you'll see it as well. So the first step in when they start to pour the tea, just start knocking like this on the table with 2 fingers. They'll understand that you might understand their culture, and they'll start to say, okay, this person knows what we do, and they understand the culture. And they'll start to relax a little bit. They'll start to tell you more information. They'll start to appreciate you as someone who understands their culture.
Yeah, would that also be a test as well? Like if you're a novice, do you also think that's a test as well? Because like if you're there and you want to renegotiate pricing and build relationships, they'll look at that as if to say, okay, they're a little bit wet behind the ears, this one. maybe, and that will go into their process in terms of having those conversations and not doing such a great deal.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the factory, I can give you an example. I was just in China last week or 2 weeks ago. I went to a factory and they rolled out the red carpet, right? They gave me flowers when I arrived. They gave me a gift basket, all these things to make them think that I didn't know what I was doing, to try and say, hey, I can take advantage of this person potentially, or I'm going to see how he reads the situation. Immediately they asked me, hey, do you want a Coke or do you want water? I said, no, I want tea. They start bringing out tea. I start knocking. The tone and the perception of what happened ended up changing, and I was in control of this conversation as opposed to them being in control of the conversation. God. And so they start divulging information to me, They give me a full factory tour to show everything. And the key when you have these conversations is to act stone cold. Do not respond to anything that they say. Pretty much be a robot in there, because anything that you make a move to, anything that they react to, they have probably 3 or 4 people in the room reading you. And likewise, you probably have 2 or 3 people in the room. And I don't know if you're in the perception of trying to read people, but you should be reading them and see how they respond to anything that you're saying. So everything that you do in terms of visiting the factory and building a relationship is always a game. It's always a push and pull game to see who moves first. But that's something that, again, if you go in there knowing these cultural differences and knowing how to really manage them correctly, you'll start to come across as an expert, and they won't mess around.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a judgment on what does that person know and what level their skill set is at in terms of negotiation. So Going on from there, so let's just say that's phase 1, right? So they've tested you, you knock on the table, you drink the tea or you request the tea. What's the next step after that? You said act like a robot, so you're taking the emotion out of it, you're not friendly. Because at some point you go out for a beer and you have dinner, because that's another way that people will go and get
absolutely
additional negotiation done in terms of their terms, and you build a bit of trust. So before we get to the nightclubs and all that kind of stuff, talk me through the next phase. So we've knocked on the table, we've drunk the tea. What's next?
Next is they're most likely going to show you either a tour of the factory. They're going to bring to the table all the business discussions that you have. It depends on when and where you are in the production life cycle of your business. So if this is your first time going over there, they're going to want to show you a tour of the factory next. If this is, their 3rd or 4th time you're already in production with them, they're most likely going to talk about any challenges that they need to overcome with you, or pricing, or whatever it is. But it's going to depend on where you are. Have that conversation naturally. And again, don't respond, don't act in a certain way. Just let them talk. Let them explain their position, explain how they need to, and then absorb that. Don't make any deals while you're at the factory. Just let them talk, and then it goes into another potential tea discussion where they're actually going to pull you aside after a factory tour, or after you have those kind of discussions, and it's either going to be a meal, or you can hopefully get a request from the team. If they request for you to have a separate room where they're going to have just a bunch of tea and potentially smoking cigarettes or whatever it is, whatever they like to do, that's when they understand that you understand Guangxi. Yeah. So it's getting invited to that meal, or it's getting invited to some sort of tea next, which is going to be the key for you to understand that you are in with them as a partner. You're in with them as far as the business culture.
Cool. Sounds good. And so we got there. Obviously, you don't smoke cigarettes if you don't want to smoke cigarettes. You get in the room, you have the tea, setting the scene. What's the next step in terms of like the meals? Who makes the suggestion? Do you eat local cuisine, or do they kind of lean your way and take you to a restaurant that's maybe? Yeah. So
that's really funny. So again, another factory I was visiting, one of my team members over there, they were asking, and I understand Chinese. I'm learning it right now. But they were asking if I wanted to go to McDonald's. Right. And obviously, being from America, they thought, hey, this guy probably wants to have American food, no big deal. And I responded to them and I told them, hey, I actually really like spicy food. So why don't you take me to the best spicy food in town? Mm-hmm. And their eyes lit up. They're like, oh, this guy likes spicy food. Okay, we're going to go to a spicy place. And, it's totally different. But I would recommend having them take you to a local cuisine or somewhere that you can show that you appreciate their culture, as opposed to, going to get a burger if you're from the United States or UK or wherever.
Yeah, no, I did think as much, but I thought I'd just ask because what we're talking about is that negotiation starts the moment you walk into that factory. it's all a negotiation until you get back and agree the final terms. So,
oh, absolutely.
talk me through etiquette at the table. What are the discussions? Do you talk about family and stuff like that at these meals? This cover that?
Absolutely. So actually, before even getting into the family discussions and anything, if you look at a table, usually there's a lazy Susan that goes around. There's a very specific spot where the guest of honor is supposed to sit, and it's the farthest away and the most center position. So if the table is sitting like this, you're here, and then the next most important person sits to your right, and the next most important person sits to your left, and it goes around from there. So you'll start to notice that, maybe your translator or your team members to your left, the factory owners to your right, and then from there it goes on. So they might have a translator that's sitting at the opposite end of you. They might have, their second in command next to them, and then they have themselves. So that's first. Again, when the waiters and waitresses are coming around with all the food and everything, still knock. I mean, it's a sign of respect to show that you understand their culture. So every time that something gets brought out, anytime that something's served to you, knock. Do that on the table. Ask for tea again. If it's lunch, if you've really passed the test, they might pull out a bottle of wine or a bottle of whiskey or something for you to drink. I've seen it done before. If it's dinner, definitely they will probably do that. Bring out like a bottle of wine or a bottle of, whiskey or something that you like to drink. And then from there, the conversation is much more free flowing about, your culture, their culture. I've discussed Trump many times on there. I've talked about my family. I've talked about their family. Talked about, the history of their factory. It's really just a normal conversation at that point. And then there's, once you get past that point, they'll start to, loosen up a little bit. They might ask you to, gambe, which is bottoms up. You kind of chug your drink with them. Another thing to understand when you're drinking is the level at which you put your cup. Mm-hmm. So it's a sign of respect to lower your cup below when you cheers. So if you're cheersing, make sure you put it below her. And if they're going to try and put it lower than you, if you keep going lower than them, they'll understand that you understand that part of the culture.
There's lots of little psychological tweaks here, isn't there, that's going on?
Absolutely.
To watch out for. This is fascinating. So you keep lowering your cup, and then when they realize that so they give up there at that point. What's next after that? So you get them drunk, or they get you drunk. Yeah, go on.
It's kind of a two-way street. You're both drinking. You're having a good time. Again, this is where they might start talking a little bit more free flowing about their business because, they're a little liquored up. Last time at China, when I was in China, there was another factory that I went to dinner with, and all of a sudden they started to talk about, how big their business was and how much important our business was to their factory. And, the other potential, they wanted to come to America and go to some trade shows and would we help them out, navigate the trade show area arena in the US for what they're trying to create. So the outdoor space. And those are the types of things. If you say, just say, hey, I'll definitely help you out. Let me know how we can help. We can get you a translator. You can stay at this place, or I can get you a hotel. All the stuff that makes them feel like you're in it with them for the long haul. They start to really divulge that information to you. And then again, that's really you now showing a true partnership and a relationship that you're trying to build for a long time, which is the number one thing you can do with your factory. Yeah. And then they start talking about maybe lowering their price. Hey, if you help me with this, maybe I can give you a few dollars or cents off of your pricing, or, hey, if you get to this MOQ, I can help you out, long term. I know you want to get into different bags. Maybe we can help, find a new bag supplier together, and that'll get us better pricing. Again, it's all these little things that if you show that you understand the culture, if you really try to build the relationship, these are the types of conversations that end up free flowing out of nowhere. It's not forced. It just happens.
Okay. And so gets to the end of the night. Are you picking up the bill? They picking up the bill? How's this working? Do you split the bill?
Typically the factory, if you're going out with them, they will pick up the bill. Right. That is typical.
But you offer, out of being polite, you offer to pay, and then they turn around and say, no, we got it covered.
Yeah, right? Of course. Typically, again, even offering might be offensive to some factories. So it just kind of depends where you are. But typically the factory will pick up the bill. If you call them and you're specifically asking them to come out with you, then you pick up the bill. Yeah. But it just depends on the dynamic, right? Yeah. From there, again, it depends on who you're out with. So, you can be out with the factory partner and his family or his wife, or you could be out with the factory partner and a bunch of his employees, and that will kind of dictate where the rest of the night goes. You could go to karaoke, you go to club, you can go to different places, but let them make that first move. We don't really suggest it. If they want to take you and they want to continue the night and continue the conversation, that's kind of the next step. After that is to go to, sing karaoke or go to a club or go to a bar or something like that.
If they're over in Guangzhou, they'll go to the party pier. Then I take it.
Exactly.
Karaoke on the party pier. Been there many a time. So next step. So we've gone out, had some fun, had food, had drinks. Yep. They're warm to you. You've warmed to them. You've built this friendship, etc. Mm-hmm. Where does the next steps go in terms of, because there's stuff that's talked over tea, then there's dinner, then there's in the club. Because we know that most business is done at 2:00 in the morning at a table when everyone's a little bit loose-lipped, right? So how do you then translate that into it being documented the following week? You get back. What's the timing on that? So if you're over in China, do you get up the next day a little bit worse for wear, hangovers, and start freshening out the remainder of the deal? Or is it very free-flowing? Oh, when we get back, we'll have a chat, etc.
Yeah, so there's this amazing app called WeChat that I'm sure everyone uses who's over doing business in China.
Yeah.
The next step should be, a thank you or something over WeChat, just to show that you appreciate what they've done. Say, hey, we'll get in touch when we get back in the US or UK or wherever you're based. And then get serious once you're back. That would be my suggestion. I mean, again, it's pretty free flowing, but everything needs to be papered up, obviously. So you should get a commercial invoice or pack list or whatever it is that you've agreed on to make sure that it's accurate. But there's also going to be some give and take on both of that, right? So there's probably some things that you promised when you were a little bit, a little bit tipsy or whatever you want to call it. And you need to make good on those promises too. But again, the relationship doesn't just end when you leave China. I mean, think about what's coming up right now, Chinese New Year. You should be WeChatting every single one of your factory partners. Happy Chinese New Year, Happy New Year, whatever you want to call it. Just let them know that you care. Let them know that it's a relationship, right? And this is like typical, friendship or relationship one-on-one. You should be treating them just like you would treat any other business partner, just like any other friend that you've developed a relationship over the past 5, 10, 15 years, whatever it is. You just need to treat them the exact same way.
Oh, of course. So to put this episode into context so that we can not put numbers on it, but what we've gone through there is quite in depth, and not everyone would necessarily go through those steps, especially people that are not visiting China. They'll do deals on Alibaba, etc. And it's very difficult from that distance. Now, that is a very good strategy that you've gone through start to finish, because there's a lot of people that listen to the show will go and visit their factories. They'll know some of this information, some of it not. What level of benefits would you see? Is like, are we talking shaving cents off a dollar, or is there big chunks coming off your costs, your product costs, because you've gone through these steps, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, this is immeasurable how much this will benefit your business. Again, it's not just dollars and cents at this point. There's the potential for factories to, not copycat you or treat you with respect or start, like if you have another product that they can't handle, they might recommend a factory that is, of great quality that you would not know, and you don't have to go on Alibaba. You can start leveraging the network that you have. Let's say you work with an injection molded factory and you're like, hey, I need a metal product. Do you know anyone who's good? They'll start to bid it out to their friends and say, hey, this guy's a great partner. He visits, he understands, he pays on time, all that stuff.
So basically 20%, if that, is down to price. The rest is getting your product out the factory first and delivered on time, shorter production cycles, relationships, loyalty, even down to people like Amazon coming in with the product and saying, we want to manufacture this, and their loyalty to you, they turn away Amazon. It's been done before. I know sellers who have had Amazon go into the factory with their product off of Amazon and said, we want to manufacture this, but X amount lower. And the factory said no. And then he repeated that back to the brand owner. So that stuff does happen as well. And like you said, it's copycats. It reduces the chance of the factory themselves doing the same product themselves under another brand name and put it on Amazon knowing in its work, because you built the respect.
Yeah, and again, when you go and visit the factory, you're not just building a relationship, you're seeing their operation, right? So you can see what they're producing. You can see if they're being straightforward with you. It's kind of a trust but verify culture.
Yeah.
over there. So just make sure, again, if you're visiting your factories, you're in production, you're doing 6, 7, 8, 9 figures, whatever it is, it's extremely smart and extremely, extremely useful for you as a business owner to visit your factory. And if you can't go yourself, hire someone who can, right?
Yeah.
Hire someone who's local, who understands the culture, who's been in production, to go check in on your factory and just show that you understand that face-to-face interaction is extremely important to your business.
Yeah.
And it will yield you results that you couldn't imagine are possible.
Cool. Makes sense. Is there anything you would like to add before we go?
I think, again, this is an extremely valuable part of your business. Most Amazon sellers, like I said, I'm not trying to blanket it, but a lot of them devalue this relationship to the point of just using Alibaba as their outsource or as their source, and using Alibaba chat as their main point of contact with the factory.
Yeah.
Get WeChat right now. Get WeChat. Find out what your factory owner's WeChat ID is. Text them or WeChat them, Happy Chinese New Year next week. You'll see what happens. It's fascinating what happens. And then, start having a conversation about coming to visit if you haven't done it before, or visit more regularly, right? This is extremely important. So those are the high level tips I can give to anyone who's doing production overseas. And then all the stuff we covered today is more of the nuanced Guangxi business culture stuff that you should implement while you're actually over there.
And what if someone doesn't want to do it all themselves and they want to outsource it to someone like yourself? How do they reach you?
Yeah, so you can go to www.gembah.com, Gembah. You can also email info@gembah.com. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation about how we can help your business from any product innovation or supply chain needs.
Cool. And anything in terms of Facebook, LinkedIn, can people reach you on there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Zack Leonard is my name, president and founder. So you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk to anyone who loves this kind of stuff.
Sounds good. Zack, thank you so much for coming in today. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this show. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you again in the next few days. Take care.